Greetings, gentlemen. I have a heavy topic for you today, but it's one that every man needs to know about. I want to talk about avoiding dangerous encounters with volatile women. Men need to avoid this like their lives depend on it, but if you're like me, nobody ever warned you about it. In particular, there's a pattern of aggression that's fairly unique to women and their men. It goes like this. A man and a woman are having a disagreement. Suddenly, he realizes that things have gotten very serious very quickly. He's cornered by his wife or girlfriend, and she's becoming aggressive. He wants nothing more than to escape the situation, but he can't because he's trapped. He can't get to the exit, and none of his options are good. He can push past her, which could hurt her or maybe cause her to feign being hurt. He could try to restrain her, but that could very well escalate things and leave her with bruises she might use to accuse him of assault, or he can just take her abuse until she exhausts herself. When a man is cornered by an angry, aggressive woman, there's virtually no way it turns out well, and in my experience as a psychologist, it happens a lot. Just how often? Well, I'm not sure anyone knows. Researchers who are willing to really dive into the dynamics of female violence are pretty rare. One study noted the concealment and denial by many academics who know the research but would rather not discuss intimate partner violence committed by women. But we know what happens. According to the Centers for Disease Control, men do more harm than women when they become violent, but women resort to violence in general more frequently than men, and they resort to coercive control far more frequently than men. The CDC defines that as behaviors intended to monitor and control or threaten an intimate partner. Those are behaviors like verbal abuse, possessiveness, jealousy, controlling where her man goes or who he associates with or how he spends his money. It includes false allegations and gaslighting or threaten to deprive access to children if he reports the abuse. Despite the general lack of research, there are several well-constructed academic studies that concur with the CDC, like this 2013 study which found that women are more physically aggressive to their partners than men, and that women are just as likely as men to engage in behaviors like isolating their partners from supportive friends and family. Unfortunately, none of these studies dissect the beginning stages of violence, those moments when conflict turns to crisis. That's a difficult thing to study because it's impossible to safely replicate in the lab, so this is where we have to turn to information from the clinic and the street. That dynamic I described earlier, where a man is cornered by a violent wife or girlfriend, is the most common domestic violence scenario I hear about in my practice. I've asked police officers and other psychologists if they've noticed the same pattern, and they've all seen it too. I should point out that in this video I'm not focusing on established ongoing patterns of abuse, though I'll touch on that briefly. This is more about responding to the first incidents of aggression and hopefully preventing it from ever entering your life in the first place. I want to show you a quick video that illustrates exactly what I'm talking about. It's a young woman in a classroom attacking a young man and him eventually counterattacking. I blurred their faces to protect their identities, and I've also blocked out the segment where he counterattacks. It's not that I'm trying to hide that part of the exchange. I'd prefer to show it, but I want this video to survive the censors, and history says that showing violence against a man is perfectly acceptable, but showing violence against a woman is not. So let's look at the video and then we'll break it down. Even though this scene is between young adults in a classroom, it's identical to the dynamic I hear about happening behind closed doors in bedrooms and kitchens everywhere. Human aggression is mostly a set of evolved adaptations, and that makes it pretty consistent across contexts. Since I've hidden her face, let me describe her. From the start, she's making strong eye contact and speaking to him while she's attacking him. It seems like there's something she wants him to understand, but she's so overcome with emotion that she's literally assaulting him while she's saying it. For his part, he's wearing a nervous smile at the start. He's avoiding eye contact and retreating. He's clearly trying to disengage. At one point, he even asked her to stop attacking him, and he gave her a verbal warning. He looks completely differential right up to this moment. This is where his expression changes dramatically. Now he makes solid eye contact. He turns his head and gives her an ominous sidelong glance. His brow is furrowed. He's angry. Next we hear a loud smack as she strikes him in the face, and then he picks her up and throws her to the ground. The main difference between this scene and situations I hear about in homes is that most men simply take the abuse. That's probably in part because they're older and have better impulse control, but quite a few men have told me it's because they've done the math and they reckon it's better to be slapped around than risk making her angrier. Plus, most men have been taught chivalry and they're simply not willing to lay hands on a woman no matter how she's behaving. Regardless of the outcome, the beginnings are pretty standard. The woman wants resolution to some problem and the man wants to escape, but she's blocking his exit. The longer they stay engaged, the more their goals conflict and feed off each other, and you saw how quickly things can escalate. There's usually a lot of history and emotion that come to bear on that single moment of crisis, unresolved tensions and arguments. But there's also a lot of biology at play, and that's worth discussing for a minute. In his 2005 book Monkey Love, the neuroendocrinologist Robert Sapolsky described a hormonal pattern that undoubtedly fuels this type of conflict. He noted that women recover from adrenaline more slowly than men. Evolutionary psychology says that adrenaline solves mostly similar but slightly different problems for men and women, so it affects us slightly differently. Those small differences can cause real problems when couples argue. While he's recovering from adrenaline and calming down, she might still be in fight or flight mode, which means her body is sending signals to her brain that she's still in crisis. Her heart is racing, she's breathing faster, and so forth. Even if he's ready to walk away, her physical arousal might be telling her the fight is still on. I've seen this in my office when couples get heated. Sometimes the man doesn't understand why the woman won't drop an issue he thought was resolved, and he's not recognizing that he's already metabolized his adrenaline, but she's still under the influence. And from her perspective, it's easy to misinterpret his calmness as disengagement, not realizing that his neurochemistry is simply functioning differently than hers. If they're not aware of what's happening, their central nervous systems can bounce off each other in a feedback loop. Her continued engagement can send him into repeated arousal, which further stokes his anger, and so on. It's like a hormonal tennis match where everybody loses. It doesn't always work this way. For one thing, calmness can be just as contagious as excitement between partners, and sometimes it's the man who's anxious for resolution than the woman who just wants to retreat. A small percentage of couples have described that dynamic to me, but in my experience, it's usually the woman who pursues the man when tensions are high. There are 3 things I want you to notice about the conflict in this video. First, he backed himself into a corner. I don't know where the door is in this room, but I know it's not here. He created his own physical barrier and prevented his own escape. So rule number 1 is don't maneuver yourself into a corner. This is second nature when you're facing an agitated stranger or colleague. I think most of us would reflexively move toward the exit when we're being pursued. But it doesn't seem to be second nature with somebody who's supposed to be on your side. So get it into your head that if your wife or girlfriend ever reaches this level of agitation, you're no longer dealing with a spat between lovers. This is a tactical situation, and you need to plan accordingly in order to keep both of you safe. That means you maintain access to the exit so you don't have to push past her. And it should go without saying that you never block her exit. No matter which one of you is trying to get to the door, you don't want any physical contact or blocking of any kind, and that includes taking each other's cell phones. I point that out specifically because it's not uncommon and it can have serious legal consequences. The second thing to notice is the crowd in the room. Notice their mood in the beginning stages. No one intervened while she was attacking him. In fact, people were laughing. It was all fun and games while she was out of control and on the offensive. It's only when he lost his head that people became concerned and separated them. That's emblematic of the way people in general view violence against men. It simply isn't taken seriously. If violence erupts between you and your wife or girlfriend, no one is on your side. I'm not whining about that. I don't suffer the illusion that life needs to be fair. I'm only pointing it out to say that it's one of the reasons the responsibility falls to you, the man, to make sure the conflict in your relationships never reaches this pitch. That and the fact that you can probably do more harm than her, so it's incumbent on you to be mindful of everyone's safety. The third thing to notice about these situations is that they are largely preventable if you have standards and strategy in place. Let's go back to the video. Judging by their behavior, this situation probably evolved long before she attacked him. These young people clearly had some sort of relationship, and there were probably indicators and red flags that he overlooked in the days and weeks preceding her attack. Now, in his defense, he's a young guy and probably didn't know what he was getting into. But if you want to avoid this, the first and best option is simply to eliminate ill-tempered women from your life at the first sign that they are prone to losing control.
Best way to avoid punch, no be there.
Unfortunately, it's tough to tell who's predisposed to violence because people are usually on their best behavior at the beginning of a relationship. There are some obvious red flags to watch for, like emotional volatility and a history of conflict, but rather than focusing on what to avoid, which can be easily hidden, let's talk about what to look for in women. Genuine signals of good character are tough to fake for an extended length of time. You want people in your life who know how to handle conflict constructively. And for that, let's take a page from my book, The Tactical Guide to Women. Those of you who've read it are familiar with the bright triad: clarity of intention, emotional maturity, and mental stability. Under the heading of maturity, there are 5 absolutely necessary, non-negotiable skills that any woman should possess if she wants to have a place in your world. She needs to have insight into her own motivations and the motivations of others. She needs to possess intellectual nuance, which gives her the ability to be angry at loved ones and still remember that she cares for them. She has to be resilient enough to get through life's rough patches. She has to internalize responsibility and take ownership of her decisions and outcomes. And finally, she has to maintain herself physically and mentally. Among other things, a healthy body and mind give her extra reserves to work through feelings like frustration, fear, or disappointment. In my clinical experience, women who possess these qualities are highly unlikely to resort to violence because they simply don't need to. They have the skills to handle rough waters. Now, there are no guarantees that a person with these qualities will never lose their noodle. It happens sometimes, and unfortunately, you don't get to eliminate risk in life. That's not an option. You only get to manage it. And by the way, sticking your head in the sand is not managing it. If you have a woman in your life who's prone to losing her temper, you can't ignore that problem because these patterns tend to escalate, or at the very least, they become entrenched. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're the one man who can help her overcome her emotional difficulties. I've seen men try. She's not that special, and you're not that talented. Bottom line is that any woman who can't manage her hostility is absolutely undateable until she develops those skills and gets a handle on herself. But I realize some of you men are already being abused and you don't have an easy escape. You're bound by children or finances or living arrangements. In my experience, one of the biggest mistakes men make in these situations is to isolate themselves. As difficult as it might be to admit to what's going on, men in this situation need to have personal and professional allies. On the personal front, they need non-judgmental friends and family who will help them strategize. They need a bug-out plan for those heated moments, car keys at the ready, and trusted friends on notice that there may come a time of need. And on the professional front, these men need practical options. Women have domestic violence shelters and resources, as they should, but men usually don't. This means you have to generate your own resources. A great place to start is to talk to a male-friendly family lawyer who knows your community and your laws and can help you devise an exit plan. You don't have to leave. You can stay right where you are, but it never hurts to have options. And spending a couple $100 on a legal consultation might turn out to be the wisest investment you ever make. Let's end this on a brighter note, fellas. As you vet women, no one will score 100% on the bright triad or whatever it is that you're looking for. You're going to make trade-offs. You'll tolerate some shortcomings on her end and she'll return the favor. And if you're both invested, you become more skilled together, and that's a pretty cool slice of life. But volatility, that's a different story. It's nothing to play with. Any man who's cornered by his wife or girlfriend is in a dire position.
Even if win, you lose.
This is just one of the reasons I recommend men spend at least a couple of years getting to know a woman before making a commitment, and I advise all men to take a zero-tolerance policy against any kind of coercion, control, or physical conflict. If she can't handle friction like a grown-up, then she simply has no place in your life. You have a mission, and if you don't have a mission, get one, because a man without a purpose is a hammer without a nail. While you're on that mission, the last thing you need is fear and loathing in your own living room. Relationships should add value to your life. They should fill your sails. They shouldn't be the anchor that drags you down. There are plenty of great women who actually deserve your time and attention. There's simply no reason to trifle with the ones who don't.